GearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I believe it's a big challenge for our building to keep things in perspective and to, if we're going to get addicted to anything, let's get addicted to the process.
And with that, we welcome you to Trust the Podcast, powered by Better Live Than Dead and the Gear Radio Network. This is episode 116.
Episode 116, baby chickens.
Don't adjust your dial. That's Mr. John Cimino at IMJC Money.
That is me. That is me. And he is Ryan, WOLF to the E at Wolfe BLTD. See that improv, Ryan?
That was very smooth. That was very smooth. We're here to talk about the Bills and the Jets, the Buffalo Bills at the New York Jets. Before we get started, as always, you can hear us on BetterLiveThanDead.com, GearNetwork.com, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. Make sure, as always, to hit that subscribe button as well to stay up to date on the latest podcasts. For me, John, sometimes, like last week, podcast got posted on the day after, and I was like, I got to post the podcast on the website, but I hadn't gotten a text from you yet. And then guess what I got? I got the ping from Spotify saying the podcast was live.
Oh, and yes, I said, look, yes.
That's why we subscribe, baby.
I'll tell you what, it's a wonderful thing for you and for me when you subscribe. I wanna thank Brayton for covering for me while I was on assignment, and I'll say mercifully, but with the most affection that I possibly can. Be the last assignment for the season. Breaking down the wall. I'm a cheer dad, and last week was the last full week of cheerleading. And there was practice every day, 2 different locations, 2 different towns. Like one daughter was in, for you Rochesterians here, you'll understand what I'm saying. For those of you listening in Buffalo, you may or may not understand, but one practice was in the town of Henrietta and the other one was in the town of Webster. Thanks. And that was like a daily thing where one of us had to go and drop one daughter off here, one drop one daughter off here, one pick this up here. Then we had a competition here following a 2 competition week like the week before. So it was crazy. Last week I had absolutely no time to do nothing, which is why I missed it.
It is kind of funny when you said, you just texted me and said it's the last week of cheerleading, and I immediately knew I had to call Brayton. There was no, you didn't have to tell me anymore. You said it's the last week. I said, look, say no more. We're good. We got it. But yes. We're here to talk about the Bills' 20-17 loss to the New York Jets. It was very difficult as a Bills fan to watch. As a Jets fan, I'm sure, John, you very much enjoyed it as you should. But as a Bills fan, it was just almost, and we'll get into this, but it was just almost like they were getting themselves to the point of taking over, and then they couldn't take over. But before we get there, one thing I want to point out, a very fun stat here. Per at Mike Heim on Twitter, HAIM. We always feature his stats here on Twitter because from Twitter on the podcast, because if the Bills lose, Mike is really the only one that puts out stats because the Bills PR team essentially acts as if the game never happened. They just stop tweeting about it. So
they do.
I got to do a little more work.
I never thought about that, but you're absolutely right there.
So like if you actually go on the Bills PR Twitter account, which is, I frequent, you're looking and it's like, let me scroll down just a little. They're like, oh, game day inactives, stats. Oh, a guy's hurt. Oh, Kyer Elam got hurt. And then the next tweet is leading the charge, week 10. They're like, well, what happened last week?
That's crazy. I never correlated that to anything the Bills are doing because they don't often lose. So I never thought about that, but you're absolutely right.
And it's very much, and I'm only going to mention this because it's election week. It's very Republican of their Twitter account to just be like, we're winning.
Oh, geez.
Silence.
You know what?
And then you're like, well, what happened? What happened?
I'm staying out of the political talk because the right will call me un-American and the left will try to cancel me. I'm like this era's Jesse the Body Ventura, where I piss off both sides quite frequently, and I love doing it.
Well, back to the stat before I move forward here. Through 9 weeks of the National Football League season, all 4 teams in the AFC East have winning records. Who would have thunk it? The last time all 4 teams had winning records this late in the season was after Week 12 in 2008, which to me and you, John, felt like a couple years ago. To everybody else, quite a long time ago.
Well, for me, I would say it felt like a couple of years ago, but also when he put it in the perspective of Brett Favre was the Jets quarterback in 2008. Does seem like it's a long time ago, doesn't it?
Hey, speaking of Brett Favre, he probably deserves to be in jail for all the money he's taken from the people of Missouri. Not looking too good for Brett Favre, the old gunslinger there down in Missouri, you know?
Negative.
Or Mississippi, wherever the hell he lives. It's all the same.
Somewhere.
John, I know
Yes.
you were pissed off this week, and rightfully so. You were lighting it up in the text message chat group. I give you the floor. To speak your piece.
I will say I was a little irritated because once again, Bills fans, today's Bills fans, not legacy Bills fans, but today's Bills fans were just unbelievably like in my face pre-game, right? So pre-game comes and they're doing their usual trash talk, which whatever. I kind of turned off social media and all that stuff during the game because I wanted to watch the game, not just as a Jets fan and a Bills sympathizer, but as a pro football fan. And I enjoyed the game, not because the Jets were winning, because I was really enjoying the battle of wits between Sean McDermott and Robert Saleh and their coordinators. It was an excellent game if you were focused on the coaching aspects, because I really feel like it was a great, an intense coach battle. And that was intriguing. The Jets played hard. I would say I feel like the Bills played hard, but Bills fans didn't seem to think that at all. Given the injuries that they had, they were in the game until the fourth quarter and had the lead the majority of the game anyways. But the Jets showed me that they played hard, and the coaches on both teams were playing a decent chess battle. So from that aspect and looking at it from a pure football fan perspective, I thought this was a great game to watch. During the game, though, and for those that aren't on my personal Facebook, I kind of make a little bit of a funny, and I believe, I can't remember exactly what show it is. My girlfriend would know. I think it's Game of Thrones. I'm not sure. But I take a picture of somebody that's kind of like in a victory stance, and then somebody that's kind of like pouting. I think it's the same guy, but I Photoshop two different faces that I'm making from two different pictures over the course of my life. One where I'm happy and quite frankly intoxicated, and I post that picture over the face of the character when the Jets win. And the funny part about it was the Jets had been losing so much that the opposite end, there's a pouty face picture of me that I will affix to this photo when they lose. And I did that for week 8 because the Jets lost to the Patriots, which they shouldn't have, but I digress. During that game, and the Bills were up, I think 14-3 at that point, or 10-3. I can't remember exactly. But the Jets were not in the lead at all. Somebody proactively took the week 8 photo, crossed out week 8, and wrote 9 in Buffalo Bills colors, and circled it and pointed it down and posted it on my wall. This was before halftime. By the time the game ended, I just replied very calmly, crawl before walk before run. And then I posted my victory picture. After the game, though, the extreme amount of, yeah, buts or still in first place posts and just like the obnoxious, like, in your face, like, yeah, but posts and trash talking posts still. It's like, dude, or dudette. It's just a freaking game. It's a sports game. Like, it's not life. Like, move on with your life kind of thing.
I mean,
and normally this will go for 2 to 3 days afterward. And while I don't like the undertone of the injury, I will say thank the football gods that something was able to divert their attention away from that, because I didn't really have to have a major rant today for you Bills Mafia fans because of the overall concern of Josh Allen and his injury. When they're talking about, UCL and stuff, that's like Tommy John surgery stuff. And that kind of overtook the Bills' loss to the Jets, and the focus became that, rightfully so. Injuries change everything. My rant would have probably been a lot longer and a lot more venomous, but at the end of the day, I enjoyed the game. I enjoyed the win. But I'm also very concerned about Josh Allen and his health and well-being, because I am a fan of the guy, as well documented. I like seeing him play ball, and I don't want to see him or anybody seriously hurt to the point where they're talking about a surgery that would essentially eliminate a season and a half for him if he were to
I was gonna jump in there and tell you that a lot of people think because Tommy John is obviously prevalent in baseball, not very prevalent in football. I've been doing the research throughout the week because with Twitter, with Twitter and their ever-changing rules under new owner Elon Musk, it's been an absolute shit show, for lack of a better explanation.
Yes.
So you've got people tweeting, Josh Allen's arm has been amputated. Josh Allen has no elbow anymore. Josh Allen, has returned to his home planet. Josh Allen got injured because he ran too hard for a ball and ran into a wall. Yep. All sorts of stuff. So it's really hard to say what's what. You had to wait for the Bills PR to come out and officially update Josh Allen's status, which we'll get to here in just a moment, as we'll get to the game in just a moment. But John, I was doing some research on UCL injuries in football. Very rare is it for an NFL quarterback to have Tommy John surgery. The last one was Jake Delhomme. That's a blast from the past, because Carson
absolutely. Palmer
had a torn UCL, or partially torn UCL. He just sat out the rest of the year, let it heal up, and was perfectly fine. But when Delhomme had surgery, he was out, I believe it was about 6 to 7 months. So at this point, even if Josh Allen were to play the rest of the season, and then in the offseason they go, look at, your elbow has not gotten any better, then maybe they move forward with some sort of surgery. But right now, we'll kind of leave you with a little cliffhanger. We'll talk more in the later in the episode about the injury and about the timetable. And about how the Bills are going to move forward from here. But
so, can I ask? I do want to ask you a question in advance of our later chat about the injury.
That's what we're here for.
As a Bills fan,
yep.
Do you, or would you want Josh Allen playing against the Vikings this week, or would you rather him sit, rest it up, and whatever happens with Case Keenum, because you kind of know the Bills' position otherwise? So
let me look really quick. Let me just go over to my favorite website this time of year, NFL next.playoffpredictors.com. So now,
I don't know why I look at this week against the Vikings as a game that's not a must win. And I think that's because of the position that the Bills put themselves in, but I'm genuinely curious on what you think.
Let's be honest. Right now the Bills are 6-2. They lead the AFC conference because they've beaten Kansas City. They've beaten Tennessee. Because that game on Sunday night was whoever wins, it doesn't matter because they've already beaten them. They've already beaten them both. So at this point, you look down at it and you say, hey, I said they beat Tennessee. They did not play Tennessee. They beat Kansas City. That's what was important. Oh, they did beat Tennessee week 2. Sorry. I was shot. Yeah. I'm shot. Trying to do too much at once. But you look at the bottom of the division. The Jets are 6-3. The Dolphins are 6-3. The Chargers are 5-3. Those are the 3 wild cards. After that, you've got the Patriots at 5-4. You've got the Bengals at 5-4, and then the 10 seed is the Colts at 3-5-1. So right now, if you are at all worried about Josh Allen's elbow, you don't let him play. You give him some time off. My logic behind this one is there's a specific reason why I would play Case Keenum this week and next week. Talk about it here shortly. But they play the Vikings, the Browns, the Lions, the Patriots, the Jets, the Dolphins, the Bears, the Bengals, and the Patriots. The Bills, for all intents and purposes, should be able to make the playoffs with those remaining games on their schedule. Not even considering what other teams are going to do. Can the Jets keep it up? They lost a big piece of their defense on Sunday. Sheldon Rankins with a dislocated elbow. The Dolphins won against the Bears, but still allowed over 30 points and needed Tua to play out of his mind in order to win that game. Now, granted, Tyreek Hill is having a season of all seasons among wide receivers, but can they keep that up? That's the thing I'm looking at. You've got the Jets playing great. You've got the Dolphins playing great. You've got the Ravens have come back to life. Can all of these teams continue to keep that up? Whereas Buffalo has been able to do this and get to 6-2 with relative ease. Let's be honest. I mean, they've lost 2 games by a combined 6 points.
Right. And there were variables in each game that
5 points. I can't even do math. 5 points. Because
there are variables in each game that you can argue contributed to those losses. And it's not to say that, the Jets or the Dolphins didn't play well enough to win in either of their wins over the Bills. But, I mean, it could have really gone either way in either of those games.
And I think without going too far into it,
we would be talking about a completely different situation had they gone that way,
Sure. And I think looking into it right now without going too deep, just if you think that these next few weeks are very important to your season, you play Josh Allen. If you don't, because all games are important because you only play 17 games, I get that. But in the grand scheme of things, if Josh Allen goes out against the Vikings or Josh Allen goes out against the Browns or the Lions and gets hurt even worse, and your season shifts from there. That's why the Buffalo Bills have done so much work in the offseason to become such a deep team. Go out and get a guy like Nyheim Hines to take pressure off of the offense, which is going to obviously be bigger now with Allen playing hurt. It's something where you put yourself in the position to succeed, even if somebody gets hurt, even if someone is out, no matter if it's Josh Allen or if it's the second, third, fourth string defensive player, offensive player, whatever. You put yourself in that position to succeed. So before we get too deep in that, though, because we do have a segment dedicated to just straight injuries after our commercial break later in the podcast, how about we get into our 3 big things here, John?
Let's do it.
3 big things brought to you by puckluck.com, your one-stop resource for all of your NHL sports betting action. Puckluck.com provides win percentages and score projections for each and every National Hockey League game to tilt the ice in your favor. Not sure what to bet or just in a rut? Not to worry. Puckluck also provides expert picks to get the puck bouncing your way. Please note, Puckluck.com, no way affiliated with the National Hockey League, its teams, or the NHLPA. Puckluck.com provides data related to gambling and cannot guarantee the success of any suggested or related wagers. As always, please gamble responsibly. Now, running down the offensive stats, it was not a great day offensively for Josh Allen. 18 of 34 passing, 205 yards with no touchdown passes, 2 picks, but he did have 9 rushes for 86 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, first off, the good. 36-yard rushing touchdown was the longest of Allen's career. Allen's 86 yards on Sunday put him at 2,717 career rushing yards, moving him past Devin Singletary, who has 2,679 rushing yards. Allen is 48 yards behind Marshawn Lynch for 13th all time. Marshawn had 2,765 rushing yards, and Allen is 125 rushing yards behind Jim Braxton for 12th, who had 2,842 rushing yards for the Buffalo Bills. Also, Allen's average of 5.61 yards per rush, that's 2,717 yards on 484 carries, now a franchise record, overtaking former Bills quarterback Tyrod Taylor, who had the franchise record of 5.57 yards per rush. Also, even more stats, some great stuff here. Surpassing 2,700 plus rushing yards on Sunday, Allen became the second quarterback in National Football League history with at least 16,000 passing yards and 2,700 rushing yards in their first 5 seasons. Not surprising. Carolina Panthers quarterback Cam Newton had 18,263 passing yards and 3,207 rushing yards in his first 5 seasons. Also, the 2,795 combined passing and rushing yards through the season's first 8 games is the 4th most in National Football League history, behind Andrew Luck, who had 2,855 in 2014, Lamar Jackson, who had 2,809 in 2021, and Russell Wilson, who had 2,008 860. That was very difficult to get through in 2020.
Indeed.
But
well, you know what? He's Mr. Unlimited.
Yeah.
Not Josh Allen, Russell Wilson. Unlimited.
His spicy Subway sandwich. That's really weird. But John, prior to the injury, last week's offensive struggles appear to me at least to be a canary in the coal mine for Josh Allen, because first off, he said after the game, quote, "It's tough to win in this league when you're playing a good team and your quarterback plays like shit. Made some bad decisions tonight, really cost our team." Now, after throwing 4 total picks in his first 6 games, Allen has thrown 4 picks combined in the last 2 games. His season completion percentage average is 64.1. He's only completed no more than 52.9% of his passes in each of the last 2 games. So, he's struggling, but is it that he's trying to do too much, or is he just making bad decisions, or is the team not gelling right? Because there were some plays where Josh said, "Hey, I threw a pick on I think it was the first interception Josh Allen threw, where he said that he expected Gabriel Davis to go a different way in his route, and then literally Josh Allen threw it directly to a jet." So you see stuff like that. I mean, I think we talked at length last week in the podcast with Brayton that the 2 picks against the Packers, I think, were more of Josh just trying to prove a point against a defense that was talking crap to him, where I think on Sunday against the Jets, just bad decisions were being made.
Yes, absolutely. I would agree with that 100%. In the game against the Packers, you're right. They were talking trash. He was trying to make I would say that that's bad decision making on Josh Allen's part as well, but he was trying to do too much. He was trying to show him up in that game, whereas this one genuinely seemed like it was just I don't want to say Zach Wilson-esque in terms of it being, underdeveloped like Zach Wilson is in terms of the decision making there, but I think there could have been better options, but he was facing a Jets defense that was arguably much better than the Packers defense, as the Green Bay Packers offense will tell you as well. So he had less time, I think, to make any sort of decision. And to your point with that first pass, that first interception, he was very clearly expecting him to go a certain way, and it just didn't work out that way. He's shown periods of time where he gets flustered and does things, and you kind of sit there and you wonder, where the hell did that come from?
It's like
I think that was more the case.
Josh Allen shows up.
Yes. I think that was more of that case, but unlike 2018 Josh Allen, he at least knows now, at least in the present day, crap, I shouldn't have did that. All right. Back at it again, and he doesn't let it bother him, and he doesn't carry it on the next drives and things like that. So there's improvement there. I mean, you're going to get eventually some of these games where these superstars return to earth and they look human, and it just happens to be a stretch where Josh Allen reminds everybody that he is a human being.
And obviously we'll talk more about his elbow here shortly. But it was a very rough looking injury late in the game. 2 more stats I want to point out here. 158 total touchdowns after Sunday ties him 3rd most all time in a player's first 5 years with Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, big disclaimer. Patrick Mahomes played 1 game in his first season. So it kind of, I guess muddies the water if some people were upset about that. I don't know. 35 career rushing touchdowns ties Allen with Steve Grogan and Randall Cunningham for 8th most rushing touchdowns all time by a quarterback. And Allen trails Michael Vick for 7th all time. Vick has 36 career rushing touchdowns. Stephon Diggs.
I think he'll own that record by the time it's all said and done.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't disagree with that one, because I know the Bills are trying to get him to run less, but when you get,
which I don't disagree with.
Yes, when you get goal to go situations, I mean, he's the guy to go to. Stephon Diggs had 5 receptions for 10 targets, 93 yards. Nothing crazy, just another good game from Buffalo's wide receiver 1. Can't argue with that. The one thing, John, we've been bringing up, and I hate to keep beating this drum because I think he's a very talented player, wide receiver Gabe Davis. Mm-hmm. He had 2 receptions on 5 targets for 33 yards on Sunday. Allen's incomplete pass to Davis traveled 69.3 yards in the air, the one at the end of the game. The longest pass attempt over the last 6 seasons per Next Gen Stats. Very nice. The one impressive thing, Sauce Gardner, people are just, saying, maybe he's a rookie, maybe he's talking trash. No, the kid is good. The kid can bring it. The gap that Gabe Davis opened up was 2.4 yards. Sauce Gardner closed that down to 0.4 yards and played the ball almost perfectly. It was a play that Davis should have made because it hit him in the numbers. I mean, you're not going to call a penalty on that for pass interference. If it were in college, it would be called because he didn't look away. But then again, you don't have to look at the ball in the National Football League to defend it, much like you do in college. So that was, earlier on that drive, there was an egregious holding penalty against Deion Dawkins that should not have happened, but whatever. You can't change the way it played out. But in my opinion, John, my humble opinion here, I think a lack of a standout true wide receiver 2 is beginning to hinder Buffalo's offense because you look at it right now. Now, I'm not saying that Davis is in the upper echelon of top number 2s in the league, but I pulled a couple or 3 top 2 true number 2 wide receivers in the league to kind of help prove my point here. First off, Davis has 18 receptions on 38 targets, a career low 47.4 percentage catch percentage. His career average is at 54.0. Davis is still on target to set career highs in targets, receptions, yards, and touchdowns, but only seems to be a big downfield target for the Bills. He has a career high, 25.1 yards per reception. Now, granted, like I said, Davis not in this upper echelon of wide receivers, but looking at it right now, you think to yourself, what do the Bills need to look for in a true number 2 wide receiver? Miami's Jalen Waddle. He has a 71.9% catch percentage. T. Higgins in Cincinnati, 65.9%. Philadelphia, Devontae Smith, 66.2%. So it seems to me like I know we've seen Davis struggle with some drops. We've seen Davis struggle with getting open and creating that space. But at some point in time, you need him to make that next step and not just be that downfield big bomb guy, because if Stephon Diggs gets shut down, who else is going to catch the ball for the Buffalo Bills?
Well, I think we need to consider, too, that this is really Gabe Davis's first full season in the role that he's in now. So I would almost excuse what his performance may show at this point in the season now, only because last year at this time, he was not in this position. Sure. And he was in the position of being a number 3 or 3-ish, depending on where Cole Beasley was. And, he proved in his time that he can be a number 2 wide receiver, but he has to have time and title to really develop into that fully. I think we give him a full season. We kind of got to give him a pass this one. And the Buffalo Bills the team around him is good enough to allow that to happen. But if we're faced with this same situation and we're having this same conversation after week 9 next year, I think that might cause alarm, the bells to come off, or the bells to go off, or cause concern, or something like that. So, I wouldn't really write him off just yet.
I think what's happening right now is that, Stephon Diggs is one of the best, if not the best, wide receivers in the league. There's no doubt about it. But it's almost as if they're trying to ease Gabe Davis into that number 2 role, but they can't, because Dawson Knox, not to his own fault. I think it's a factor of the way the offense has been developed around the new version of this offense. Dawson Knox has 20 receptions through 7 games for 182 yards. 183 yards. I'm sorry. Isaiah McKenzie, who was expected to step up and be great in the slot this year, has 20 receptions for 182 yards. After Gabe Davis, who has 451 yards, the next most yards for a receiver is running back Devin Singletary at 207. So goodness. Nyheim Hines is going to step up big in this offense for sure. I wouldn't be surprised to see him line up as a wide receiver a lot, especially maybe two running back sets or something like that, whatever. But if the Buffalo Bills, and I'm just going to throw this out there, if the Buffalo Bills are serious about making a deep run this year, they have to go out and get Odell Beckham Jr. If for nothing else, if to just say, look at, we're going to put Diggs on one side, Beckham on the other, and stick Gabe Davis in the slot. Perfect. Or maybe you're going to put Gabe Davis on a side, Diggs on the side, and Beckham in the slot. Because here's the thing. Yes, I think Gabe Davis has struggled because there have been catches he has not caught that he should catch easily, that he's shown he can catch. But again, like you said, John, there's always that second year, that sophomore slump.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on a second. Let me look at the stats here. I'm getting them popped
up. They've all gone through it.
So it's not even, I was going to say, that's what I was verifying. Gabe Davis has been, this is his third year in the league. But this is his first year as the guy, the number 2 wide receiver. And it's like, you get to that point where the league, and I know I was going from one cliche to another, but just hear me out here. You get to the point where the league, you show up in the league, you dominate, the league adjusts to you. Now you have to adjust to the league. And that's what it seems like for Gabe Davis, is he's having to adjust to the coverages he's seeing in the way that they're playing him. And that, to me, seems to be where the struggle is, because again, there are passes that he should have caught, and whether it's cornerbacks and safeties playing him a little more physical or whatever the situation is, he has to be able to adjust to that. But if the Buffalo Bills are serious about, if they're serious about making a deep run in the playoffs, and Odell Beckham Jr. wants to come to Buffalo, you absolutely have to make that deal happen.
Yeah, I would say in a situation of we want to win now, yes, absolutely. You would want to pull the trigger on that and bring him on and, change and adjust accordingly. But in the same, you don't want to hinder one's development. So this would be the season to do that. If you were going to do that, I would question next season if indeed they were to do so, face with the same situation, because that's truly a demotion for Gabe Davis. If you're telling the man, we believe in you, you're the number 2 guy, and then mid-season you're bringing in a bigger name, now it makes sense, because you kind of you're kind of wanting to make that run. You're kind of wanting to finish the goal of a Super Bowl run and possibly bringing a championship to Buffalo. It would be hit or miss. This would be a very different conversation and a very different tone if it were next year and
Sure.
we were visiting this. I don't think it would be as much a demotion as much as it would be an alleviation, if you will, for the pressure on Davis to allow him to continue learning. So I would believe that bringing in an Odell Beckham Jr. or even someone else as well, just however you acquire him.
I think if anything, taking the pressure
would
off
help
of
the
Gabe
case.
Davis a little, taking the pressure off Gabe Davis would be good.
Exactly. At some point, he's got to put those big boy pants on, and he's going to have to be held accountable for his learning and development. But I don't think that this would be the year to kind of get on the, Gabe Davis isn't the guy train just yet.
Hey, it might be like looking at the defense, going to our second of the 3 big things. Not much to talk about, but I'll have a couple things here for you. It's like bringing in Von Miller for the defense. It was nothing against Greg Rousseau. It's to help guys like Greg Rousseau develop, and that's clearly happened for the Buffalo Bills defensively. So maybe you bring in a guy like that, another I would say good, if not great, wide receiver to help a guy like Gabe Davis develop and get better at his craft. But wrapping up the defense here real quick. Linebacker Von Miller, 1 sack. He is it's a 7th on the season. He surpassed Simeon Rice, Tampa Bay Buccaneer great. At 122 sacks, Von Miller now has 122.5 for 20th all-time on the all-time sack list. Damar Hamlin, 12 total tackles, 8 solo, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, 1 quarterback hit. He really is developing into a reliable secondary option for the Buffalo Bills. Also, linebacker Tremaine Edmonds, 11 total tackles, 3 solo. I know tackles are whatever, because someone's got to do it. But Edmonds has had, 10 plus tackles in 3 straight games, tying a career-long streak. So we'll keep an eye on him on Sunday against the Vikings. Now,
absolutely. Very good. That's a good thing to have. I know some teams that barely have 2 tackles.
It's a dirty job. Tackling is a dirty job. Someone's got to do it. And for a guy who misses tackles from time to time, it's nice to see him get a lot of them. So We'll take a quick commercial break here. We'll come back. We've got some third of the 3 big things, looking at some more stats, figuring out what went wrong, and then we're going to take our look ahead. Stick around for more of Trust the Podcast here on the Gear Radio Network.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And we're back here on Trust the Podcast. I don't know why I almost said the wrong name, but it's Trust the Podcast, our third of the three big things, looking a little deeper into the game here.
Might be because the last time you and I were on the Trust the Podcast, it was the bye week, and we were BLTDing it. So,
oh yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Hell yeah.
John, a couple things before we look ahead here. First off, per at ESPN Stats and Info on Twitter, the New York Jets blitzed twice the entire game, the second lowest in Josh Allen's career, yet the defensive line of the Jets had the Buffalo Bills offensive line on their heels all day. Allen was sacked 5 times, no doubt about it. The Jets defensive line is for real. Here's the thing that's frustrating about the game
from last season.
Here's the thing that's frustrating about the game, though. The Bills defense held Zach Wilson to 18 for 25 passing, 154 yards, 1 touchdown, but allowed 174 rushing yards and 1 touchdown on 34 attempts. Post-game, Von Miller said about the Jets running game, quote, they were going to copy some of Green Bay's plays, the plays that Green Bay ran, and they did. Miller also looks at the loss as, quote, good medicine, which is what he said, what he was preaching after the Miami loss earlier in the season. So, again, they're professionals. They're paid, and they're made to adjust. They need to adjust to the running game issues because at this point, I mean, a lot of the good guys are out. We talked about it last week when Matt Milano's out. Excuse me, the Bills don't win.
Right.
They've got a 500 record now when Matt Milano doesn't play. So looking at that, it's, you have to figure it out, but also maybe keep the guy healthy, which we've got some good news about that coming up here. But still, it's frustrating to see the Bills defense struggle 2 weeks in a row with the run game because that was a game that let's be honest, John, that's a game that they could have won. That's a game that they probably should have won, but they couldn't get out of their own way. They couldn't stop the run. And that was ultimately their downfall. They couldn't protect Josh Allen. They couldn't stop the run.
Right. I was genuinely expecting it to be a closer game than we were accustomed to in recent Bills versus Jets history, only because having watched every New York Jets football game this season, I can tell you that this team has vastly improved from last season. Maybe not so much in Zach Wilson's development phase, but you have to factor in injuries into that, equation as well. But defensively, they've revamped their defense. They put on the pressure. The draft, it's very rare that you get the opportunity to draft 3 first-round immediate impact players, and the Jets did that last year, and that helped them greatly with that. But I did ultimately, if you were to tell me last week, if I were to be on the podcast last week, I would have picked the Bills to win in a close one. I did not expect the Jets to win at all, primarily because of the fact that Buffalo, really has their stuff together and they are disciplined, although they didn't, defend the run against Green Bay and New York. But that's kind of another thing too, because the league is so focused on the sexy quarterback and airing the ball and things like that. And sometimes going back to the old country ways of ground and pound and playing hard defense is a way to win the games. If you've got a good defense, you're always going to be in the game. If you've got a good run game, it's going to take pressure off of the quarterback. Zach Wilson didn't have to win this game for the New York Jets. The defense and the running game took care of that for them. And that's what I think the league tends to forget as we focus more on the higher points and the airing the ball out and the, Allen to Diggs or Tua to Tyreek or Mahomes to Juju, like that type of stuff. We seem to forget about the basics. And the last 2 weeks, the Buffalo Bills kind of forgot about the basics where the Green Bay Packers and more specifically, the New York Jets did not.
Well, the Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets face off again in 5 weeks' time on Sunday, December 11th, currently scheduled for 1 p.m. But if we're taking a quick look here, the NFL schedule, let me get this popped up. First off, the Bills face Vikings, Browns, Lions, Patriots. The Jets face Patriots, Bears, Vikings, and then they go to Buffalo to face the Bills. So here's my little prediction here, John. Little prediction for the podcast.
Okay.
I'm just trying to kill some time while I get to the prediction. The page here. I'm looking for the page. It's not loading.
Uh-oh.
There we go.
I can tell you that the game. My cousin Marissa and I, Marissa is a very, very big Bills fan. We were planning on going to the Jets Bills game in December because honestly, both of us thought it would probably be just a throwaway game.
Yeah.
Now, though, at this point, you never know. It might be flexed. It might mean something, and we might not be able to get tickets, at least at decent pricing.
I mean, I don't know if you listened to the podcast last week. I know you tried to. I know you're also very busy. I did mention to Brayton that I was, I just kind of had a F it, Rex Grossman F it, I'm going deep, and was like, you know what? I'm looking at tickets. I was like, maybe John would want to hop a flight, hop a train, go down to the game in New York City and go to the Jets Bills game. That'd be a lot of fun, last minute thing. Tickets were like $400 a piece. So that quickly, it was a good thought and it was a gone thought.
No, that is something we would not have been able to afford in such a short period of time.
If we could spend like $100, if we could spend like $100 a piece, get a ticket and a flight down to New York City, because JetBlue does very cheap flights to New York City. Maybe, but looking what I was going to predict here, week 14, the Sunday night football game right now is Kansas City at Denver. If Denver continues to scuffle and Buffalo, you're looking at Buffalo and New York, potentially both being at, look at the Bills could be, if we're on the one side, it was 6-3, 7-3, 8-3. They could be, Bills could be 9-3. The Jets could be 8-3. The Bills could be 10-2. The Jets could be 8-3. I mean, that would be a perfect Sunday night football game to get flexed into. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying it could happen. So the next time,
I would hope that would happen, because then for the Jets fans out there, critiquing Zach Wilson, that's going to be the first real big stage that Zach Wilson's going to be put on, and to see how he would, just to see how he would perform. This past week was the closest that he's ever been, and I don't think he did terribly. But yeah, that you talk about a barn burner of a game, man.
John, we've been on this podcast.
Crossed. I'm hoping for that.
We've been on this podcast long enough to know that looking at it, we talked about in the past, Josh Allen doing exactly what he needed to do to win as he was developing. That's exactly what Zach Wilson, did on Sunday against the Buffalo Bills. One last fun stat for you. Kicking from distance Sunday marked the 7th time in Buffalo Bills franchise history that both Buffalo and their opponent recorded a 50-plus yard field goal in the same game. This last occurred on October 31st, 2021 versus Miami. In those games, Buffalo's record now 5-2.
It's an interesting stat there. Again, you're best in the business. These stats pop up in every single podcast where you're like, I didn't even think about that. Where did that come from? Yeah. But good job as always, Ryan.
Thank you. It sucks if Twitter goes away, because that's where I get all my fun stats. But
yeah, we're going to have to probably consider looking at another source, given all the easy verifications and all that stuff. So
yeah. Well, hey, our look ahead. First off, injury news. The injury list, the injury report is chock full of big names. First off,
it's growing too. That's also concerning.
Right tackle Spencer Brown was a full participant in practice. I would presume he's going to play against the Vikings. Jordan Poyer missed the game with an elbow injury. He was a DNP this week. Excuse me. He also looks like he has either bursitis or tennis elbow, because he has a gigantic, it looks like a softball or a golf ball in his elbow. It's pretty gross. Baseball or golf ball. It's, not that big, but it's big enough to notice. That's what she said. Linebacker Matt Milano missed the game. You got me still? Matt Milano missed the game with an oblique injury. He was limited on Wednesday, full on Thursday. Presumably he'll play on Sunday, but this is the one thing I was telling you, John. Julianne Pelosi, I don't know how to say her last. I'm so sorry with this. I'm so bad with this stuff. I'm gonna start a social media.
I'm not gonna lie to you, Ryan. I lost you briefly.
That's okay.
I'm hoping it didn't translate onto the podcast part where your audio cut out, but I couldn't hear a thing.
Okay,
I think it might have been me though.
That's okay.
But whatever you said, I agree with you.
I kept talking. I said Jordan Poyer has like a golf ball size lump in his elbow. Looks like he's got bursitis or tennis elbow, one of the two. It doesn't look very comfortable though. Matt Milano missed the game with an oblique. He was a full participant. Maybe it looks like he should play this weekend. Julianne Pelosi, again, I think that's how you pronounce the last name. I need to start a social media thing where people put in the pronunciations of their last name so I don't screw it up. Buffalo is 30-11 in the last 3 regular seasons, a 73.2%. I think I pointed this out. It feels like I pointed this out before, but if I didn't, I'm sorry. They're 30-11 in the last 3 regular seasons. Without Matt Milano, they're 5-4 in that same span. So they need Matt Milano in the lineup. He's very important to the Buffalo Bills game plan. Cornerback Tre'Davious White missed the game, John. I think this is because of the turf field in New Jersey. I don't think there's anything else.
Yes.
Sean McDermott said he missed the game because he's, quote, not quite ready to play yet. Confirmed no setback did occur. On Monday, Sean McDermott said Poyer, Milano, and White are all improving. But I'm going to think that they're not only are they saving his debut for Buffalo, but also they don't want to play him on a turf field coming off of an ACL that he did on a turf field in New Orleans.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, and that kind of feeds what's going on now. The big talking points of all the injuries that have been happening because of playing on turf. Like, I mean, at this point now, just freaking play on grass. Like the technology exists to grow the grass and preserve the grass and all that stuff. I mean, look what Arizona does with the Cardinals. They play indoors, but they play on natural grass. They bring the grass outside to maintain it opposite their games. I mean, playing on turf is ridiculous. It's the cause of a lot of injuries and has been the cause of a lot of injuries for a long period of time. The NFL needs to really switch that up.
So I did see something. There was a data. It says data shows recently. Let me get it popped up here. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, here you go. Kevin Seifert of ESPN. Data compiled for the NFL and NFLPA shows that injury rates on non-contact injuries to lower extremities are statistically the same on artificial turf versus natural surfaces. Important context in the ongoing debate. But it feels like guys are getting hurt more on turf because, end of the day, what's the difference, John, between grass and between turf? Players say that grass shifts, so it will adjust with them as they plant. Where in domes, they say it's like playing on concrete. Plus, when you step on the turf doesn't move with you, which is how the non-contact injuries are happening because you put the pressure down, and it doesn't shift when you shift. It's going to find the weakest link, which most of the time is your knee. Let's just be real.
I know that, the NFL puts a lot into their research and analysis and everything, but I think in the case of the playing field and how it adjusts and everything, I would trust the athletes that are actually running on it and being tackled and being slammed onto those surfaces to tell them, hey, this is what happens when we run this way on this type of field or run this way on this type of field. I would trust the athletes more than people sitting in the back observing and collecting data.
I agree with that. Defensive end Greg Rousseau left the game with a high ankle sprain. His status is set at week to week, which he was a DNP this week, as one would expect him to be. Kaiir Elam left the game with an ankle injury. He was limited on Wednesday at DNP on Thursday. We'll see what his status is for the game this week. Before we get to the big story, we've got Tremaine Edmonds was DNP with a groin and a heel injury. I don't know how that happened, but it sounds painful. You had a couple. Von Miller had vet rest. Ryder Saffold vet rest. But again, the big DNPs are Edmonds, Elam, Poyer, Rousseau, and obviously Josh Allen, who we're going to talk about here. Suffered an elbow injury where toward the end of the game, the right tackle failed to corral the pass rusher of the Jets. Josh Allen went to go throw the ball, and his elbow got snapped back like one of those little, the little cats at the Chinese food restaurant.
Yeah,
it kind of looked like that.
It was gross to see because Allen still tried to make the throw and pushed against it too. And you can tell. And it looked painful.
It did. And he had a UCL injury back in 2018 as well. Missed, I think it was 4 or 5 games. There was a lot of speculation through the week. Was it torn? Was it strained? Was it sprained? They're saying officially an elbow strain, a partial tear in the elbow, but it's something that he'll be able to play through with. It's essentially pain management. Does it hurt? What can you do? What can't you do? But my thought being, and this will kind of roll over into the Bills-Vikings Week 10 preview, Sunday, November 13th at 1 p.m. on Fox, I believe it is.
You said you have CBS on here. But.
Yeah, I put CBS, but I just remembered it was Fox.
Okay.
Sorry. I should have prefaced that.
How dare you?
I'm just keeping you on your toes. Make sure you pay attention.
I am.
I teased this earlier in the episode, John. The Bills play the Vikings and the Browns the next 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Backup quarterback Case Keenum has played for both the Vikings and the Browns. Mm-hmm. And you know what Daddy loves?
Minneapolis Miracle happened while he was playing for the Vikings.
It was Keenum to Diggs on the Vikings. Now we got Keenum to Diggs on the Bills. Daddy loves himself a good revenge game.
Yes.
I know the Vikings are 7-1. Only loss coming to Philadelphia earlier this year. Kirk Cousins, 1,099 passing yards, 13th in the league, 13 touchdowns, tied for 9th, doing exactly what he needs to do to win games. No more, no less. Running back Dalvin Cook has 608 rushing yards, 9th in the league. Stud wide receiver Justin Jefferson, 867 receiving yards, 2nd most in the league. And Minnesota's defense is allowing 20.1 points per game, 12th in the league. First off, John, I don't know when the history of football is written, that Justin Jefferson, Stephon Diggs trade might go down in history as one of the fairest trades ever.
Absolutely. 100% agree.
You have Stephon Diggs, who is on a Hall of Fame trajectory, on a Hall of Fame track right now. And Justin Jefferson, who early in his career still also on a Hall of Fame trajectory.
It was a good trade. It was a very good trade. Not just a good trade, but it was a solid situation for both teams. Diggs got to go to Buffalo and pair up with Josh Allen on a budding championship caliber team, and Jefferson was drafted to be developed into the next Diggs for Minnesota, and it's working wonderfully for both. I'm not fully sold on Minnesota. I think they are I know their record says 7-1, but I don't see them as the team that's like, you think of the Bills, you think of the Chiefs, and then you think of 30 other teams, right? I don't have Minnesota or Philadelphia for that matter. And I know that Philadelphia is the only unbeaten team left, but I don't look at them in the same way that I look at Buffalo and Kansas City. And I think that could be because of how poor the NFC is as a whole. I don't want to say that their 7-1 is fluky or anything, but I really think that this is a game that I don't think is as big of a must win for Buffalo as it would be for Minnesota. It's a bigger statement game. Like if Minnesota beats Buffalo, it's going to be like, oh my God, the Vikings are here. Buffalo beats Minnesota, it's going to say, yeah, we just beat Minnesota,
So my thought process is this: I know that the Vikings are good. I know that the Eagles are good. I like to see a team lose and then figure out exactly. I like to figure out exactly how they respond when faced with adversity. That's just what I like to see, because that tells me how good a team actually is. Now, just to point out here again how good this trade has worked out for both teams. Since Diggs has become a Buffalo Bill, he has earned a league-high 413 targets, has had 3,617 receiving yards, 25 touchdowns. Justin Jefferson leads the NFL with 3,883 yards since 2020 to go along with 20 touchdowns. Seriously, could not have worked out any better for both sides. But again, looking at it, I think to myself, hey, you know what? I mean, if Case Keenum starts the game on Sunday, even if Josh Allen starts the game on Sunday, I think the Vikings are probably going to win on Sunday.
You think
nothing
so?
against the Bills, unless if the Bills defense can adjust and put the game in Kirk Cousins' hands and not get beaten by Dalvin Cook, I think they've got a very good chance, because it's hard to say, because I feel like just the way that they're going lately, I don't know that they're going to lose 2 in a row, but Minnesota has been playing sound football the entire season. And the only loss came to Philadelphia, but it was also in primetime, which Kirk Cousins becomes a pumpkin in primetime.
Right. So you're taking Minnesota?
I feel like I'm on the fence, because I could see Buffalo winning.
Well, you got to pick one for the purposes of the podcast. You got to pick one.
I know.
I'm taking Buffalo. I'm not sold on Minnesota as a upper echelon elite team. I think they're a very good team in a very poor conference this season, as evident by teams like, anybody in the NFC South, or even in their division. Like their division is pretty weak. So I'm going to take Buffalo on this one, led behind Case Keenum, for that matter. and I'm going to give him a score of 24-21 Buffalo.
I was actually, you know what, I hate that you said that, because I was sitting here thinking, and you know what? I feel like if Josh isn't playing on Sunday, Josh Allen's not playing on Sunday, the team will rally around Case Keenum. The Bills probably will struggle. The Vikings probably will struggle. It's supposed to be very cold and miserable on Sunday. Give me Buffalo with a late or game-winning field goal, 24-21.
Perfect. All right.
Rallying.
We are in alignment. I like it.
Full disclosure, before John said 24-21, I thought to myself, give me Buffalo late with a field goal, 24-21.
All right. We'll say that. Same wavelength, my man.
Because Justin Jefferson
podcasts together, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Justin Jefferson probably will get a touchdown. Dalvin Cook will probably get a touchdown. They'll find a touchdown somewhere else, maybe TJ Hawkinson or something like that. But I ultimately think that Jefferson and Diggs are going to be featured highly. Nyheim Hines is going to be featured. I think what Buffalo might end up doing too is you're going to see a flip of how they normally play the game. Instead of throwing and then using running to complement, I think they're going to run and use throwing to complement, because the goal here on Sunday will be to keep the ball out of the Vikings offense's hand. I think the Vikings defense is good. Don't get me wrong, but the goal here is to keep the ball out of their hands, because if you keep the ball out of the offense's hands, you keep the ball out of Dalvin Cook's hands, you keep the ball out of Justin Jefferson's hands, gives you the best chance to win.
Indeed, absolutely. I would agree, and it should be a fun one to watch. For sure. I think also playing a factor into this is going to be the dome team visiting a non-domed stadium. Yeah. So advantage Buffalo.
I'm all about it, man. 24-21 Buffalo Bills. You heard it here first on Trust the Podcast. I am Ryan Wolfe at Wolfe BLTD. John is at I am JC Money. John, we are Trust the Podcast.
You're not.
As always, thank you again for tuning in. Get well soon, Josh Allen. Don't hurt your little elbow. We need you, man. Go Bills. As always, go Bills.
Yeah. Goodbye.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.